Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the news from OfCom that they're slapping GB News with a £100,000 fine for a programme they ran with Rishi Sunak during in the lead up to the election campaign, shall we say, which breached the rules, with the size of the fine reflecting the fact that GB News keep breaking the rules. And there's also another aspect to the punishment which GB News really don't like. But first, for daily political commentary, please click the subscribe button so you don't miss out. So, when GB News hosted Rishi Sunak for a programme called The People's Forum, it broke broadcasting standards because it gave Sunak a platform to say basically whatever he wanted, uncontested, and therefore broke the rules on impartiality. Made especially serious because the channel keeps doing this. So OfCom have gone public with their intention to levy a £100,000 fine. The fine, of course, won't really make a difference to a TV station that is making a loss of about £40 million a year. Arguably, the part of the punishment GB News will not enjoy is OfCom's order that, in addition to the fine, GB News are going to have to broadcast a statement of OfCom's findings on a date and in a form that OfCom decide. So they won't be able to just broadcast an apology in a tiny little ticker at the bottom of the screen for about 4 microseconds. However, the punishments can't actually take place yet because GB News have sought a judicial review into the punishment, which has been granted. They were refused permission to block OfCom from going public with their findings, which is why we're hearing about this now. GB News are arguing that Ofcom's decision would damage their reputation. See, the thing is, assuming the High Court decides that Ofcom have done their jobs properly, which I think is probably fairly likely, what GB News have done here is ensure that the story becomes much bigger and that the public will get an extra opportunity to find out about it. So if they think Ofcom's findings are going to damage their reputation, their attempt to seek an unwise judicial review is likely to damage it further. Because Ofcom have announced their findings and punishment. Then we'll be hearing about it again when the High Court dismisses GB News' case, assuming they do. And then GB News themselves will then have to broadcast a statement to the effect that they're not impartial. Now, in The Guardian's report on this, it was quoting the chief executive of GB News, complaining that Ofcom were failing in their duty on a number of areas, but including being proportionate regarding matters of public interest. But it's of immense public interest that politicians do not just get to have a platform to say whatever they want without challenge on broadcast, where there's a broadcast license. If they want to do that, they can do it on their own outlets. The Tories, Labour, everyone can make their own YouTube channels. They can say whatever they want on there uncontested. But when they go onto television channels, no, there are rules. And you may well be thinking, well, hang on a minute. I've seen plenty of Tories in particular get away with interviews on other television channels with only a bare pretense at challenge. And yeah, I would agree with that. It shows you how low the bar is to meet the impartiality rules. And yet GB News, slithering around like a snake, cannot even get themselves over that ridiculously low bar. And you may also think that this action against GB News seems a bit weak. I mean, like I said, they're making a loss of £40 million a year. What the hell's a £100,000 fine going to do? And sure enough, I cannot imagine that it's going to force them to behave themselves in the future. But the fact GB News are taking Ofcom to court, which has the potential to Barbara Streisand the hell out of this story, I think that shows it's affecting them. They're not spending all of this money because £100,000 fine, the cost of this action is going to go up considerably with legal expenses, right? So they're not spending all that money and risking extra negative publicity of a judicial review for a laugh. They're doing it because they don't like it and they really want to try and avoid it. And with GB News really struggling financially, and since the election, they'll become much less relevant because they are not able anymore to get members of the government on their shows or even to answer their questions at press conferences. I don't think Keir Starmer's answered a single question of a GB News so-called journalist at any press conference. Correct me if I'm wrong. So the channel could struggle here. I was taking the piss out of Talk TV yesterday because they'd got Liz Truss on to discuss the budget. Seriously. But GB News did the same thing last night. She was on there with Jacob Rees-Mogg. And they have the nerve to say Ofcom are damaging their reputation. I mean, look at them. They're a TV station startup, started a few years ago. They got tens of millions of pounds a year to throw into a hole. I mean, I don't know how much money they get in total, but they're losing tens of millions of pounds a year, and they have every year, because they don't have a business plan. They do not have a business plan. Their brand, I mean, their plan, such as it is to raise revenues from advertising, but their brand is so toxic that very few advertisers will be associated with it. So they struggle to raise revenues, and that is made worse because I can tell you, as someone who gets my income from advertising revenues, the advertising landscape over the past couple of years has been really bad, like spectacularly bad. And they've been having a lot of difficulties coming to pay agreements with their backstage staff. They're already running on a shoestring staff behind the camera. If they lose more of that, there's not a lot they can do with just their increasingly irrelevant presenters, is there? Nigel Farage cannot carry the whole thing for them. Like they didn't even keep hold of that fake vicar. You know, they've traded on the fact that they could get government ministers to appear on their shows because the Tories were too thick to realise that GB News exists to help Reform UK split the vote on the right. They were just going, oh, well, we need to win back those voters. Let's go on their show and try and win them back. It didn't work. It made it worse. They just amplified the relevance of GB News. But that's gone because we've now got a government who they've not even shown any interest in pretending GB News even exists. And now they're getting upset at Ofcom, who look like they're a bit sick of making excuses for the transgressions, because we've had that over the last year. Oh, yeah, they broke the rules, little rascals, but, you know, they're really quite a small channel, despite the fact GB News themselves keep claiming they're like the biggest growing news channel there is. Whereas now, maybe Ofcom have decided, and I don't know whether Ofcom have just independently decided this, or the new government are saying, look, we actually want you to take your job seriously, please. But for whatever reason, Ofcom look like they're losing their rag with GB News. You know, so it might be wishful thinking. But you do wonder if maybe this is the beginning of the end now. They don't have a sound financial model. They're going to be less relevant because they cannot get members of the government on their shows. The Tories are much less relevant now, so getting some Tory MPs on their shows is nowhere near as effective. And they've got Ofcom breathing down their neck. And they may well have the High Court throwing the book at them as well. I mean, they won't punish them. But at least saying, yeah, you were banged to right, shut up. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe. And if you'd like to support the channel further, you can join for memberships. Thanks for watching. And until next time, I'll see you later.